Maverick News presents The Rick Walker Show. Defrag your mind.
Hey, we're back on the air. We were gone for a couple of days, but we're back. I was able to reestablish the live stream links. Sorry about the absence. We had a little bit of a, what shall I say, a reprimand from the social media platforms. I think it had something to do with a phone call or two that we received a couple of nights ago, where we were prohibited from uploading new videos because of some things that were said. I think that's probably what the reason is. They don't exactly tell you why. They're never specific, but we have a new badge of honor to wear now that we've been essentially banned twice now on our channels. So that's okay. We're back. Everything's okay. And I've been able to reestablish the feeds for today. So that's good news. And it looks like we are firing on all channels: YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, Rumble. I've got green lights across the board, so we are in good shape. And today we're starting off a little bit earlier than normal because we have a news conference taking place in Ingersoll, Ontario, at the General Motors CAMI Automotive Assembly Facility. It's a plant that's been there for, well, a while now, but it's still very advanced. And General Motors is in the process of retooling that plant, as I understand it, to begin dedicated production of Bright Drop fully electric commercial delivery vans. Bright Drop has a couple of different models that I believe, and the Zevo 600 will be produced there, along, I think, with the Zevo 400. The company, Bright Drop, working with General Motors, they have a delivery system that they utilize and have developed. And they're going to be selling these delivery vehicles in the commercial market. I have some video to show you what they look like. And today's announcement, I don't know yet exactly what the announcement is going to be, but we will have the Prime Minister there, Justin Trudeau. Ontario Premier Doug Ford will be there. Minister Vic Fedeli will be there. And it likely has, I mean, you can pretty much guarantee that the announcement is going to have something to do with the retooling and plans to begin production, I think, in this coming spring, when what do you call it? The retooling of the plant is complete in April. General Motors officials say that CAMI Assembly will become Canada's first full-scale EV plant when Bright Drop's Zevo 600 production begins in the fourth quarter of 2022. So I guess, you know what it probably is? They're probably going to announce the beginning of production. I'm speculating. I don't have the news release in front of me yet. It hasn't been made available, but we will pick up our live stream direct from Ingersoll, Ontario shortly. Let me just show you what the Bright Drop vans look like. Here we go right here. I'll bring this up so you can see it. This is what they want to produce. what they will produce. And as you can see, they have these, it's sort of like a modular shipping system of sorts. And this is from a previous news conference at the facility when they were out driving around in one of these electric vans. And you know how I view electric vehicles. But for at least the short term, one way or another, it will bring jobs to the CAMI plant. I think the previous vehicle they were producing there was the Chevy Equinox. So this is a major shift for the plant. And I believe they are hiring people right now. So if you're looking for a job, there might be opportunity there for you in Ingersoll, Ontario at the CAMI plant. A lot of people from the London, Ontario area work there, commute back and forth. It's only about a half-hour drive. GM going all in on electric vehicles, although we did report last week that a General Motors executive has indicated they are not going to actually, at this point, completely suspend production of internal combustion engines. Getting mixed reports on that. I think these car companies see that the governments on all levels in just about every country are pushing hard to transform the automotive industry and make it all electric. But as the shift from ICE propulsion goes to or shifts to electric, it creates a strange market dynamic because you have now fewer and fewer companies actually offering internal combustion engines. And as a result, it also presents an opportunity for companies to jump in and increase market share, depending on how quickly the public adopts the electric transformation. Much of it will be driven by penalties that are imposed upon the sale and purchase of internal combustion engines over time, taxation, grants on the other side to incentivize the purchase of electric vehicles. It will come down, I think, a lot to the economics behind the purchase and operation costs of electric cars and trucks and electric commercial vehicles like this one. Who knows what's going to happen from year to year, but they are pushing hard right now. And most of the governments in place at the moment seem to be very focused on it. I think politically, ideologically, they're committed to it. But if you have, say, Donald Trump reelected in the US, or maybe a more conservative government elected in Canada, you might see some pullback on that front. Donald Trump kind of indicating that. You know, he's very focused on oil production, cheaper gasoline at the pumps. And I think that's also the case for some premiers as well. Like in Alberta, you're seeing the new premier there, Danielle Smith, reducing taxation on gasoline. The province is the leading oil producing province in Canada. They produce all this energy for Canada. I think they have the fourth largest oil reserves in the world or something like that. So depending on which way the politics shifts, it will dictate largely what happens with electric vehicle production and how quickly, if at all, internal combustion engines disappear from the marketplace. Government can push and push and push, but at some point reality sets in as well. So it depends on whether they're right or they're wrong, and we'll find out over time. If the shift to electric vehicles is the right one. A lot of concerns about where the electricity will come from, infrastructure, charging stations, charging times. What do you do with all the old batteries? The environmental impact from mining all the heavy metals and precious metals that are needed, the lithium, the cobalt required to produce these electric vehicle batteries. Massive amounts of government money being pumped into these companies, keeping in mind that every dollar the government gives to any of these automotive production companies, any General Motors, Ford, Hyundai, Honda, Toyota, all these companies are receiving massive amounts of money. Chrysler, FCA, well, now Stellantis. It's all tax dollars being pumped in, hundreds of millions, billions even of dollars into the transformation of the automotive industry. Again, we'll just bring up some video here so you can see what these vehicles look like. So the news conference that starts shortly in Ingersoll, Ontario. I have been looking at some other stories to bring you up to date on. And I'll tell you, with being off for a couple of days, so much has happened in the world. And there's so much that I've been wanting to share with everyone that it's been frustrating because I haven't been able to get on here to talk to you guys and chat back and forth with everybody. But I am seeing this morning that CTV News is reporting on a new Nanos survey and a poll, which says most Canadians backed the invocation of the Emergencies Act during the Freedom Convoy protests. The poll coming out as the public portion of the inquiry into the use of the federal government's decision to use the Emergencies Act to crush the Freedom Convoy draws to an end. We saw the testimony with the roundtable discussions end last week. So they surveyed more than 1,000 Canadians. They were all asked about their thoughts on the use of the Emergencies Act. 48% said they support the use of the Emergencies Act. 18% said they were supportive in somewhat of the decision. 23% said they opposed the use of the act, and 7% said they were somewhat opposed. 4% were unsure. It says here that support for the use of the Emergencies Act was highest in Atlantic Canada. 74.6% indicated they were supportive or somewhat supportive of the decision. In Quebec, 73.4% said they were supportive or somewhat supportive. The strongest opposition came, not surprisingly, from the prairies. 43.7% said they opposed or somewhat opposed the use of the Emergencies Act. If you take a look here, you've got Canadians aged 55 or older were also more likely to support or somewhat support the use of the act. Younger Canadians between the ages of 18 and 35, not as likely to support it. When asked about which groups Canadians felt they had the worst impression of due to the federal inquiry, 46% identified the convoy as protesters, while 23% said the federal government, I'm sorry, 46% felt the convoy protesters were basically to blame for any problems. 23% viewed the federal government in a negative light. 8% cited the Ontario government as being a bad actor in this, while 10% said they have a negative impression of all of the groups. 40% said the inquiry left them with the best impression of the federal government, and 13% said they had the most positive impression of the protesters. 25% unsure. It's quite clear, however, that Canadian people are divided, remain divided on this issue and many issues overall these days. I don't think there's ever been a time when Canadians have been more divided along political lines. The Nanos poll also asked respondents whether they believed Canada would be prepared for another protest similar to the Freedom Convoy. 45% said Canada is not prepared or somewhat not prepared, and 50% said Canada would be at least somewhat prepared. So they're getting into the nitty-gritty on some of this stuff with the poll, but overall, I would say public opinion on the Freedom Convoy and the use of the Emergencies Act has been shaped largely by the mainstream media, and you can see the impact of that through the results of that poll, I would say. Even today, I'm just looking, and on CPAC, they compiled a highlights reel from the EA inquiry. I scanned through it before coming on the air here this afternoon. I can tell you that the way it was cut together was quite biased. It makes the government look much better than it deserves. The most embarrassing moments were all edited out. The moments when Brendan Miller left Deputy Prime Minister Chrystia Freeland speechless on the stand when he just walked away from his podium, and she was looking down, went to answer his question, and she looked up and saw that he was actually gone, and her jaw sort of dropped open. That moment edited out. Much of the exchange between the convoy lawyer and the Prime Minister, where he was asked questions like, when did you become afraid of the Canadian people? That was all edited out, and he responded, I am not. When he said that he was not calling, that he did not call people names, edited out. So the highlights, sanitizing, in my view, the entire Emergencies Act inquiry. So moments away now from live coverage of the Emergencies Act, the news conference in Ingersoll, just about 3 minutes away. And these are images of the electric vehicle delivery vans that they're going to be producing at the CAMI plant in Ingersoll. And yes, big day for the plant. My guess is being December, and they say that production was supposed to begin in Q4. It's Q4, fourth quarter. So my guess is today we will see the Prime Minister and the Ontario Premier formally announce or maybe cut the ribbon on the retooled CAMI plant. I'm just going to check in here with my source at General Motors. I think we've got something here. No, still don't have the newest stuff. Obviously, they're embargoing the exact information until the news conference actually begins, which is okay because we're going to have it for you live right here. So as soon as they announce it, you're going to have it live. What we do know is that Trudeau's itinerary says the announcement will mark a milestone in manufacturing electric vehicles. The provincial and federal governments each invested $259 million toward the retooling of the CAMI plant. It's part of their plan to make I'm just checking this. Hang on a second. So we know that the CAMI plant, they announced back in April, it was retooling to complete that retooling by the end of this year into the country's first full-scale commercial electric vehicle production facility. So this has to be what it is. They're going to announce today that production is set to begin, or already has begun, because it is the fourth quarter and it looks like they're on schedule. I don't think you would see this pomp and circumstance unless they were ready to make the big announcement. So my guess is, and we'll see, but my guess is they'll have the scissors ready and the ribbon stretched out, and they'll be ready to cut that ribbon and begin production of the new EVs, these commercial delivery vans in Ingersoll, Ontario. Later tonight at 6 p.m. on our regular program, assuming we still have access to our social media platforms, we will talk about a variety of things because there's other news that I wanted to get to. I already touched a bit on the Twitter files, the release of all those pieces of correspondence that reveal the intentional censorship that happened at Twitter. Elon Musk releasing those documents. Folks, that story, bigger than Watergate. Bigger than Watergate ever was. I'm going to be commenting on that tonight. And it's a reflection of the state of Western society in general. Huge story, very important. And yet the mainstream media largely still ignoring it. This is the Hunter Biden laptop story with a layer of, with another story layered on top that is even bigger than Watergate itself. The Biden laptop story, honestly, folks, had information that again, I think was bigger than Watergate ever was to begin with. Now you have the suppression of that, which has become another story involving probable illegalities layered on top. So now you have two stories, one on top of the other, both related, that make it bigger than Watergate. And all of that connects to everything going on in politics today. Everything, even the war in Ukraine. It shows what a terrible state of decay we are in politically in both Canada and the United States. And I'll be showing you some comparisons tonight as well between what that did in the United States and what happened with that story or those two stories and what's going on in Canada. There are definite parallels. And it should be a concern for everyone. It's a massive, massive story. And yet these kinds of problems have become so, I would say, normalized that that the mainstream media is able to suppress it just simply by ignoring it. And I would say that is in itself a huge problem. It isn't what they're telling you, it's what they're not telling you. And they are not sharing this stuff with us. Okay, the live stream set to begin any moment. So let's take a brief break. And when we come back, I think we'll be into the live feed and the news conference at the CAMI Automotive Facility in Ingersoll, Ontario, Canada, with Prime Minister Justin Trudeau and Ontario Premier Doug Ford. Don't go away. We will be right back.
Maverick News. Fighting for freedom.
The New World Order. Government overreach. The Great Reset. Mainstream media lies. Now more than ever, independent voices are needed. Donate now, at freedomreporters.com. That's freedomreporters.com. Maverick News. The antivirus program for your mind.
Fear not the storm, for truth is on our side. Maverick News. The world is watching.
Okay, we are queued up. We have established the live feed. We'll be ready to go there any moment. They have not started the program yet, but we do have the feed coming in, so we are good to go on that front. So we are ready to go at any moment. I guess Elon Musk made some offhand comment just a couple of days ago about purchasing General Motors. It's amazing how he has been able to leverage his empire, largely, I would say, through government grants and subsidies. Once the media darling and a favorite of politicians everywhere, Elon went from nothing to, well, not nothing, but I mean, what I'm saying is he took Tesla and built it into the electric vehicle car company, the one that sort of pierced through and began the electric vehicle revolution. Not a big fan of that, but I have to say I'm impressed with what he has done to push back on the free speech front with Twitter. That is huge. It's huge. We'll be talking tonight as well about the comments from James Woods, the actor, on the Tucker Carlson show. Very revealing, the way that they went after James Woods to suppress his voice, take away his free speech by engaging in cancel culture. And here we go, folks. I see the news conference is about to begin, so we have that queued up. We're ready to rock and roll here with that. No audio feed yet, but we'll pick that up in a moment. Huge money, huge tax dollars going into all of this EV transformation. Governments are all in on this. From electric battery production facilities to this, Canada's first full-scale EV assembly facility. This represents a major transformation of the automotive industry. As I've said many times in the past, I view this transformation of the automotive industry as being government driven.
Please welcome our speakers for today's event, including Prime Minister Justin Trudeau, Premier Doug Ford, GM President Mark Royce, and special guests.
Here you go, folks.
And now, please turn your attention to the stage for a special message from the Chair and CEO of General Motors, Mary Barra.
Hello, everyone. Today is a historic day as we celebrate the start of Canada's first full-scale EV plant, building BrightDrop Zevo 600 electric delivery vans. After so much great work, our team in Ingersoll now joins the ranks of the world's first EV manufacturing plants. You are making history and advancing GM on our path to a zero emissions future. We need everybody in on this journey together. On behalf of General Motors, I want to express our thanks to Prime Minister Trudeau and Ontario's Premier Doug Ford for their leadership, partnership, and support. We would not be here without you and your teams. I also want to recognize our talented and dedicated employees, our CAMI team members, our GM Canada engineering team, and the BrightDrop team. Today is the start of a very bright future. Congratulations as well to Dennis Pimenta, our CAMI plant director, and Mike Van Bokel, the chair of Local 88, and BrightDrop CEO Travis Katz for your leadership and collaboration. This is a big day for everyone. Together, we are going to deliver a better future for our customers, our planet, and generations to come. Congratulations.
Please welcome President and Managing Director of GM Canada, Marisa West.
Wow, Good afternoon. It's amazing to see everyone here today. Our priority is, of course, to take care of your safety, and I want you to know that we have trained representatives on site who will direct you where to go in the event of an emergency evacuation or take shelter situation. But we begin today by respectfully acknowledging that we are on the traditional lands of the Anishinaabe and Six Nations. We offer our gratitude to our First Nations, and we recognize their history, spirituality, culture, and stewardship of the land. We are especially honored to be joined today by our special guests, Prime Minister Justin Trudeau, Premier Doug Ford, Minister Vic Fedeli, and Unifor National President Lana Payne. I would also like to acknowledge Brian Petrie, Mayor of Ingersoll, and our elected and government officials joining us today. Some other very special guests are joining us from GM, including Gerald Johnson, Vice President, Global Manufacturing and Sustainability, Steve Carlisle, Executive Vice President and President, North America, Mike Perez, Vice President, North America Labor Relations, and Steve Horniak, Chief Commercial Officer of BrightDrop. I also want to thank our hosts for today, CAMI Plant Director Dennis Pimenta and Local 88 Chairman Mike Van Boekel. Thank you for joining us to make a big Canadian milestone. The team began retooling CAMI for BrightDrop production on May 1st. And just 7 months later, the BrightDrop and CAMI teams have completed their first Zevo 600 here in Ingersoll, making CAMI Assembly Canada's first full-scale electric vehicle plant. It seemed fitting that Kathy Gillespie, the chief engineer for BrightDrop, drove the Zevo 600 out today. Thank you, Kathy. As Mary said in her video, today is the start of a very bright future. Canada's EV future is no longer something that's on the horizon. It's here and it's now. And that's good for Canada and that's good for the planet. None of this would have been possible without the support of our amazing teams here or without the partnership of the governments of Canada and Ontario. To tell you more, it is my pleasure to introduce one more very special guest and the leader of GM's global EV transition, our GM president, Mark Royce.
Well, thank you, Marissa, and my sincere thanks to Prime Minister Trudeau, Premier Doug Ford, and Unifor President Lana Payne for your partnership. Today shows the true potential of General Motors' EV strategy. It also represents the best of GM, fast, flexible, and first. BrightDrop is the fastest product launch in our history, from concept to commercialization in less than 2 years, accelerating our ability to serve BrightDrop customers and reduce tailpipe emissions from last mile deliveries. More than 4 people are currently working here as part of the launch team preparing the new CAMI EV assembly to start our first full shift of production right now in January. Congratulations to the entire BrightDrop and CAMI team on your record launch and becoming Canada's first full-scale EV plant. Great job. I also want to congratulate BrightDrop CEO Travis Katz, who is leading the BrightDrop business as we reach the tipping point for EV adoption and the shift toward green energy solutions. That's happening right now, and Travis is leading it for us. BrightDrop includes an entire ecosystem tailored to the needs of last-mile delivery companies. And the advantages BrightDrop offers, including reductions in tailpipe emissions and fuel costs and in congestion in our cities, are simply staggering. BrightDrop offers the Trace Cart, developed and tested largely by our Canadian engineering and innovation teams right here in Canada as well. In testing in Toronto and New York, the Trace Carts improved delivery efficiency by 25%, reducing congestion in crowded city centers. Every BrightDrop Zevo van built here will save our customers up to $12,000 in fuel and operating costs annually compared to traditional diesel vans. That's a big deal. At full-scale manufacturing of BrightDrop Zevo, electric delivery vans begins our customers replace their gasoline and diesel fleets. Greenhouse gas tailpipe emissions will decrease exponentially. In fact, we estimate over the next 10 years, the fleet of BrightDrop vans built at CAMI will prevent 22 million tons of tailpipe emissions, 10 times more than the greenhouse gas emissions from all GM operations in Canada over the same time frame. That is something to celebrate, as the shift to electric vehicles is changing the world right now today. And none of this would have been possible without our great partners. Again, on behalf of Mary Barra and all of us at GM, I would like to personally thank Prime Minister Trudeau and Ontario's Premier Ford for their leadership and partnership in helping us become a vibrant, electrified automotive industry right here in Canada. It is an honor to have you both here today to say a few words. So it is my honor to introduce the Prime Minister, Mr. Justin Trudeau. Mr. Prime Minister.
Thank you, Mark. It's so great to see you and Marissa and everyone here from GM who made this happen. Happy to be here with Lloyd Longfield, who's a regional MP and a hardworking member of our amazing Auto Caucus. Travis of BrightDrop, Lana of Unifor, and of course, Premier Ford and Minister Fedeli. Thank you very much for being here. I want to say hi to Brian Petrie as well, the new mayor of Ingersoll. Congratulations, look forward to working with you. Look forward to showing up with lots of great announcements, but this is a big one. It's great to be with all of you to share this really good news today, but we wouldn't be here today. Even for all the hard work everyone sitting in this front row did, we would not be here today if it wasn't for these people. For all of the workers here that made this happen. Because, you know, I get to travel around the world and pitch to a whole bunch of different companies. Last time I was standing with Premier Ford, an announcement like this. It was an announcement at Nokia that featured a real strong emphasis on research and development here in Canada for the Finnish telecommunications giant. We pointed out there was, millions of dollars invested by governments to draw them in. But every government in the world would love to invest millions of dollars to draw in places like this. There's a huge competition around the world to try and make sure that we are part of the future, that we're securing future for communities, for workers and their families. And yes, government can step up with money, and we do. But the best selling point we have is always invariably and inevitably the extraordinary workers at plants like this. So thank you very much for everything you guys are doing. You see, 8 months ago, we announced investments to retool the CAMI EV assembly plant here in Ingersoll. Then GM began working to get CAMI ready for electric vehicle production. And today, as Mark pointed out, in record time, we're opening the first full-scale commercial electric vehicle plant in Canada. Aujourd'hui, on ouvre la première usine à grande échelle de production de véhicules électriques commerciaux au pays. On maintient des milliers d'emplois pour la classe moyenne. C'est une excellente nouvelle pour nos travailleurs automobiles. Et c'est une bonne nouvelle pour notre environnement, parce que c'est en faisant la transition vers des véhicules électriques qu'on s'assure que nos enfants aient de l'air pur et des bons emplois pour des générations à venir. When we invested in GM's project, we knew we'd get results. Now, as the first BrightDrop electric vans come off the line, we get to see these results. And it's great to be here with Doug and Vic, but usually there's four of us for these announcements. And our friend François-Philippe Champagne, who worked incredibly hard as industry minister, if he were here, he'd be pointing out, Mark, the time of the text he sent you to get this rolling. He is tireless, as all our team members are, in drawing in announcements, and he really wishes he could be here today, but we have him over in Europe right now securing more deals for more workers across this country to be able to deliver for more jobs for Canadians. And of course, I want to thank the people at GM and Unifor and Premier Ford and his team for working together as partners to make this happen. But mostly, again, we need to talk about Canadian workers who your skills, your ambition, and your hard work get the economy going and help us convince big companies like GM to continue investing in Canada. You know, just a few weeks ago, I was in the Indo-Pacific to strengthen our economic ties with the region, to create good jobs in Canada and more opportunities for our businesses. We know how important Asia is to the growing global economy. So during that G20 in Indonesia, I spoke to a room filled with business leaders to pitch them on what we're doing here in Canada, on why investing in Canada is exactly the right thing. So it's not just people who are as close as GM is, who sees up front all the potential that Canada has, but people from around the world noticing what Canada has. We have the values that make us reliable partners to invest in, to grow in, to commit to generations worth of work. I've talking with some of the workers here this morning, been here for 25, 30 years, seen all the different iterations of it. And that's what people get. When they invest in Canada, you get that reliability for decades, for generations to come. We also have the raw materials that that the global economy needs. We know that there's a lot of questions a whole bunch of companies around the world have around the supply of essential goods, of raw materials, of energy they're going to need. We've seen Russia as an unreliable partner. We've seen increasing challenges from China. We know we need to be delivering those raw materials from reliable, friendly, environmentally protecting countries like Canada. And there's a huge amount of interest in Asia and around the world at Canada being part of how we move forward as a world. And most importantly, of everything I was selling businesses around the world on, it's Canadians themselves. Our strong, educated, diverse workforce that is the envy of the world. With immigration, we're actually growing faster than most other than all other G7 countries. Our education system, our livable communities, the opportunities we have to build bright futures for people from coast to coast to coast, despite and because of the transformations in the global economy, gets that mix of ambition and forward thinking, roll up your sleeves hard work that has characterized and defined Canadians for the longest time. We're creating a whole supply chain here in Canada so that auto workers here in Ontario will be able to build electric vehicles with batteries made in Quebec from nickel, mined in Northern Ontario, and lithium from Alberta, with made in Canada steel and aluminum that is some of the cleanest in the world. And I can tell you that international investors are noticing. For example, they're noticing full on that with our government's efforts, we've gone from 5th in the world to 2nd in the world when it comes to the battery supply chain. We're growing a strong middle class in Canada so workers, their families, and everyone can succeed. Il y a encore des politiciens qui pensent qu'il faut faire un choix entre l'environnement et l'économie. Et quand on voit ce qui est en train de se bâtir ici et ailleurs au pays, c'est évident que la protection de l'environnement et l'économie doivent aller ensemble. L'usine dans laquelle on se trouve aujourd'hui projette de fabriquer 50 000 véhicules utilitaires électriques par année d'ici 2025. Ce résultat concret, c'est exactement ce qu'on va continuer de livrer. We know the world is changing. We know we're facing significant challenges in the way we do things and the way we need to do things to make sure the future generations have the best chances ever. But that's what we're up to as a task. 7 years ago when we first took office, we talked about the fact that climate change was both a massive challenge and a real opportunity. Well, for the first few years, we ended up talking much more about the challenge it represented than the opportunity. But over the past while, with a whole bunch of great announcements with Doug and with premiers across the country that go straight to this, people are seeing tangibly that this means good jobs now and good jobs reliably into the future. That's what people want for their families, for their communities, for their country, and that's what together we're delivering. Thank you very much, and now it's my intense pleasure to introduce my friend, Premier Doug Ford. Doug.
Well, good morning, everyone. What a great morning it is here. And let me thank the Prime Minister for joining me today to celebrate an amazing Made in Ontario milestone. And I also want to give a shout out to my #1 salesperson. I always call him our best salesperson in Ontario, Minister Vic Fedeli, and your partner, Minister Champagne, as well. You both work so hard. And my great MPP, Ernie Hardeman, and Mayor Brian Petrie. And I have to tell you, folks, I called Ernie the other day. It was yesterday. It was his birthday. He served with my dad. So what are you, 25 years old now? You know something? All the very best, Vic. I want to thank the team from CAMI. As the Prime Minister said, you know, this plant wouldn't even be here without folks like yourself, hardworking people, and we want to thank you. Vic played a major part in making today possible with his tireless efforts, showing the world there's no better place to invest than right here in Ontario. Let me also thank the team at GM, as I just mentioned, but Marisa, thank you so much. Dave, thank you, and Mark for inviting us to celebrate this incredible milestone, because GM is making history with the first full-scale electric vehicle production facility in Canada, which will be their EV hub for the Bright Drop commercial vehicle line. And our government couldn't be prouder to support GM's incredible $2 billion investment, manufacturing, and R&D, with our own support of more than $250 million. And I need to thank the federal government, who have matched our investment and shown their commitment to making Ontario a world leader in EV manufacturing. The results we're seeing are nothing short of exceptional. Over the past 2 years, we have secured game-changing investments in our auto sector with more than $16 billion in new investments, including more than $12.5 billion for Made in Ontario electric vehicles and battery production. These investments are being made in communities across the province, from Windsor to Alliston to Oshawa, and today right here in Ingersoll. These investments in hybrids, electric vehicles, and EV batteries will create jobs now and in the future. They're putting us on the path to being a global auto manufacturing powerhouse once again, from the critical minerals needed to produce batteries in the north to our skilled auto workers in southern Ontario, and clean steel manufacturing in Hamilton at the Fasco and Algoma up in Sault Ste. Marie, powered by clean Ontario-made energy. We're leveraging every part of the EV supply chains. We have everything we need to make the cars of the future in Ontario by Ontario workers from start to finish. GM's commitment to this plant is a massive vote of confidence in our province and our incredible workers. Together with partners like GM, we're building Ontario for today and for tomorrow. But my friends, we know there's more to do. We must stay focused, and we can't take anything for granted. As we navigate global economic uncertainty, our government has been hard at work building an economy that can weather any storm, an economy that never loses sight of what's most important: helping people succeed, helping workers succeed. That starts with creating economic conditions that attract investments and growth in good jobs. We cut red tape to reduce the cost of doing business in Ontario by $7 billion annually, year after year. We've kept taxes for people and businesses low. We're investing in skilled trades and a workforce that's prepared for the jobs of today and tomorrow. We're building roads and highways like Highway 413, the Bradford Bypass. We're investing $1 billion investment to build the road to the Ring of Fire, and we're making investments to improve the province's competitive advantage and ensure that Ontario remains the greatest place anywhere to live, work, and raise a family. And while the world faces economic uncertainty and our challenges with inflation are not over, one thing I have complete confidence in are the people of Ontario. There are no harder working people on earth, and I know that together we will accomplish incredible things. Together we will build Ontario with a great workforce. And I have to give a shout out to Lana. Lana, you've been a true leader for Unifor. You've been a true leader with ourselves. And thank you for helping out in different areas of the province. I'll leave it at that. But I'll tell you, what a blessing it is for Unifor to have a great leader like Lana Payne. So thank you. And it's now I want to just say, God bless the people of Ontario. I do want Vic to come up and say a few words before we officially introduce Lana. So if you could come up and say a couple of words, that'd be great.
Well, we've heard all the numbers, Premier. 8 months ago, $2 billion announced by GM, 259 million injection from the province and from the federal government. So to Marisa and to Mark and to Travis and to Dave, we would say on behalf of the people of Ontario, thank you very much for that deep investment, that deep confidence and the hope that you've given to all of the people of Ontario. It's so exciting to see. I would think about William Durant in 1908 and that milestone of the first General Motors product. And I would think of Colonel Sam McLaughlin down at the other end of Oshawa and think what he would be thinking when you hear the word historic and the word milestone. Well, this is another one of those days. This is an historic day. This is a milestone day, the first ever full-scale production of EVs in the country. And here it is right here in Ontario. Congratulations to all of you at General Motors.
Thank you. Yeah. So now I would like to introduce the champ of all champs, Lana Payne, the president of Unifor National President. Thank you.
Wow, this is quite a room. Good afternoon, everybody, and Solidarity Local 88. It's an honor to be here standing with you in this impressive facility. Of course, I want to recognize Marisa, Travis, and the entire GM team and Bright Drop team for their work, bringing this outstanding electric vehicle here to Ingersoll at home in Canada. I also want to thank Prime Minister Trudeau, Premier Ford, as well as Ministers Champagne and Fedeli for their unwavering commitment to growing the Canadian auto footprint. Very important work that you've all been doing. What we're witnessing today is history in the making. For nearly 40 years, CAMI has produced some of the highest quality vehicles on offer anywhere in the world. That's a testament to these workers, to the members of Local 88, to their skill, to their sweat, and to their determination. It's a testament to Brent and Mike and the local union leadership for their foresight, for their commitment to their members, and their commitment to this community. This EV shift is bringing Canada's net zero ambitions clearly into focus. How we use this moment to build a stronger economy, to manage the transition for workers, to grow good union jobs, everyone got that? Good union jobs, will ultimately determine the success of this effort. There are a lot of eyes right now set squarely on this facility. Many stories will be told and studies written about what happens here at CAMI in the months and years to come. You, my friends, are the torchbearers. You are the front lines of this important electrification project, and I know you will succeed because Unifor members at CAMI have always risen to the occasion. Auto workers and workers across the independent parts supply chain in this country have always risen to the challenge. This day is the beginning of a long and very exciting journey, and we're very proud to be part of it at Unifor. I'd like to now introduce Steve Horniak, Chief Commercial Officer for Blue Drop, and thank you very much for your time today.
Hey, good afternoon. Before we jump in, just a quick thank you to Travis Katz from BrightDrop for his leadership and really taking the company from a visionary perspective to where it is today. Unfortunately, Travis is ill and was unable to make it here today. But again, thank you very much, Travis. I know you're watching us live from home, and we really do appreciate all your leadership. It's my great pleasure to be here today, celebrating GM and BrightDrop's collaboration with our Canadian colleagues and the remarkable achievement of retooling CAMI in record time. As Mark mentioned, demand for last-mile delivery continues to grow, and EV adoption has reached a tipping point. I'm proud that BrightDrop is on the leading edge, meeting customers' needs and driving progress. We began with a vision transforming last-mile delivery and have already have products on the road making a difference today. With CAMI's help, we'll still be turning hundreds of vehicles that we have out there today into thousands of vans on the roads and streets out there. The ability to make this kind of impact with speed and scale is central to our mission at BrightDrop and central to helping global fleet customers reduce delivery costs, optimize operations, and meet carbon reduction goals. Expanding BrightDrop manufacturing is critical to delivering on existing orders. We have over 25,000 Zevo reservations and letters of interest from some of the world's biggest brands already, and we're just getting started. With the retooled CAMI facility, we have the capacity to deliver on that number many times over. And with steadily increasing customer interest and demand, we're absolutely going to need it. In fact, I'm excited to tell you about the latest customer we're announcing. DHL Express Canada will be adding our Zevo electric delivery vans to their fleet early next year. And there might be a DHL van here today. thank you, Kathy, for bringing this beautiful van to the place, starting here in just a couple short months. And we're really excited about it. In addition to the Zevo, DHL is also piloting our Trace e-carts. We've got a Trace e-cart back there for you to see, and software, the Bright Drop Core in Toronto today, with additional regions to follow. So as Bright Drop's international expansion begins with manufacturing in Canada, we'll also be serving a new international customer in Canada as well, a global delivery giant committed to reducing carbon emissions, relieving urban congestion, and meeting net zero commitments. I'm especially pleased by their interest in experiencing the synergies of the Bright Drop integrated platform, the ecosystem of vehicles, electrified containers, and software that deliver additional value when used together. This is a historic moment, not just for those in the room, but for the world. Bright Drop is now positioned to produce vehicles at volume and help us fight climate change at scale, leaving a better place for the next generation. Along with my colleagues on stage today, I'd like to thank Prime Minister Trudeau and Ontario Premier Doug Ford, GM Canada, and both the CAMI team and Bright Drop teams for your efforts and partnership in getting us where we all are today. Thank you very much.
Press conference participants to get onto the stage. We'll now have time to take questions from media. One question, one follow-up. On a maintenant du temps de prendre des questions des médias. Une question et une question de suivi. On va commencer avec la première question. First question, CBC.
Hi there. Considering the U.S. Inflation Reduction Act.
Can we turn up the volume up here a little more? I'm barely hearing the question.
1, 2, 3, 4,
Let you
5,
start
6,
again.
7. Morning. Considering the U.S. Inflation Reduction Act, will Canada get its fair share of the electric vehicle business?
Over the past number of years, but quite frankly, for a long time in Canada, we've always focused on being competitive with the U.S. markets. It's one of our great advantages of as Canada, having access to the great market in the United States. We have diversified increasingly over the past number of years. We're now the only G7 country with a free trade deal with every other G7 country. But the lion's share of our trade will always be with the United States. And that's why we're focused on making sure we're competitive. There's lots of reasons Canada's competitive, whether it's our healthcare and our educated workforce, whether it's our resources, so many advantages that Canada has. But we also know that we do need to be making investments and drawing in countries and companies. So we'll continue to do that. Our focus is on remaining competitive. And as you can see from this announcement today, companies in the United States and around the world are always very interested in taking advantage of all that Canada has to offer.
And just on a different topic, the last-minute amendments brought to committee at C-21 raised a lot of criticism. Would you consider bringing in some changes to the prohibited list of weapons?
Let's be very clear. We made a commitment to continue to move forward with strong, smart gun control in this country, to keep communities safe, to keep Canadians safe. And we're going to continue to do that. We move forward with a national freeze on handguns. And a few years ago, we banned military-style assault weapons. Banned assault-style weapons. We're going to continue to do that. Now, we've just put forward a list, and we're consulting with Canadians on that. We're hearing a lot of feedback around concerns that hunters are saying about guns that they use more for hunting or hunting rifles or shotguns. And that's what we're listening to feedback on now to make sure that we're not capturing weapons that are primarily hunting weapons. But we all know that we need to make sure that guns that are designed to kill the largest number of people as quickly as possible have no place in Canada. And we're going to continue to move forward with that in a strong and smart way. We'll continue to listen to Canadians. We're not going after hunting rifles or shotguns. We are targeting the most dangerous weapons, the weapons that were used in places like École Polytechnique or recently in South Simcoe or in Portapique that have caused far too much tragedy over the past many, many years. So we're moving forward in a responsive way. Some conservative politicians at the federal level want to restore military-style assault weapons. We're not going to let them do that. We're going to continue to keep communities safe in a smart way that respects law-abiding gun owners.
En français, s'il vous plaît. En français.
En français. On a pris un engagement il y a bien des années de continuer à garder nos communautés en sécurité et on va toujours le faire. On a avancé avec un gel sur le marché des armes de poing et on avance avec une interdiction totale sur des armes de style d'assaut. Et la réalité, c'est que on va faire tout ce qui est nécessaire pour garder les Canadiens en sécurité, tout en respectant les chasseurs et ceux qui utilisent des armes à feu de façon responsable. Mais il y a certains modèles qu'on ne peut pas permettre dans notre pays parce qu'ils ont été créés pour tuer le plus grand nombre de gens le plus rapidement possible. Et donc, nous allons continuer de faire le travail. On est en train d'écouter les Canadiens pour s'assurer qu'on n'est pas en train de capturer des armes qu'on ne devrait pas. Mais on va continuer d'aller de l'avant pour protéger les communautés et on va repousser contre ces politiciens conservateurs qui travaillent avec le lobby des armes à feu et qui veulent ramener le droit de posséder des armes de style assaut dans ce pays. On va continuer de protéger les Canadiens.
Next question, Toronto Star.
Hello, my question's for Premier Ford. It's Marco Ovid from the Toronto Star. I wanted to ask you about the fact that when you first got elected, one of the first things you did was cancel the EV purchase subsidy here in Ontario, saying that you weren't into spending money on helping rich people buy expensive cars. In the meantime, we've now announced your government has announced billions and billions of dollars to make sure that these kinds of cars and these supply chains are happening here in Ontario. Are you at all worried that we're now going to produce cars like this here in Ontario and they're just going to go and get purchased elsewhere because people don't have subsidies here?
Well, thanks so much for the great question. When I first got elected, people were going out. The taxpayers of Ontario were subsidizing buying vehicles from everywhere but Ontario. So the money wasn't staying there. We took a different approach. We've invested over $12.5 billion into long-term sustainable jobs. We partnered with the federal government, and through the great work of Minister Champagne and Minister Vic Fedeli, we've brought back the auto sector. When I first took office, folks, and the auto sector knows this, the previous government chased 300,000 jobs out of this province because of high taxes, red tape, regulations, high electricity costs. We took a different approach. We've cut $7 billion off the backs of companies, take the burden off the companies. And when you create the environment and the conditions for companies to come here and thrive and prosper and grow, guess what? So do the great people here that are working here day in and day out in every single auto plant around Ontario and battery manufacturer. That's what we believe in. We believe in investing into the people, investing into technology, and investing into companies like General Motors. And here's a perfect example how that pays off. But thank you for the question.
Now, when it comes to, can you hear me? Sorry. Now, when it comes to, I guess, encouraging the market, here we have encouraging the manufacturing, but encouraging the market, there are two tools that are widely used both in the United States and Canada. One is, as we were talking about, the purchase subsidy. We see a big one now in the United States with the Inflation Reduction Act. It exists in several other provinces, including Quebec and BC. We also have a mandate, right? There are these mandates that require car companies to sell a certain percentage of EVs. And when we look at the combination of these two tools, the places that have one or both of them sell a lot more EVs. Would you consider either of these for Ontario?
Well, first of all, the market dictates, and the market's going to be EV. That's what it's going to be. Don't kid yourself. I'm going to be on the phone over the next week with the head of Purelator, head of UPS, head of FedEx. I think FedEx is getting some. DHL, thanking them for that. Other businesses, encouraging them to buy the EVs right here from the CAMI plant. This is an incredibly engineered vehicle, and it's environmentally friendly. So it all starts from the critical minerals of the north, up by the Ring of Fire, and we look forward to partnering with the federal government, that flows down to green, clean steel at Algoma and Dofasco. And by the way, with a great partnership with the federal government. We put electric arc furnaces in. That's equal to taking 2 million cars off the road. And then great partnerships with all the auto sector to produce some of the cleanest vehicles anywhere with clean energy. We just had a great announcement out in Darlington with the SMRs, the small modular reactors, 300 kilowatt reactor that will produce energy for 300,000 homes. So these vehicles are going to be produced with clean steel, clean energy, and great people.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Next question.
Good morning. Question for the Prime Minister. Despite sanctions against Iran, parts from a Canadian company have been found in Iranian drones being used by Russians in Ukraine. What is the government willing to do to make it more difficult for Canadian parts to end up in these drones?
We're obviously extremely concerned about those reports because even as Canada is producing extraordinary technological innovations here for around the world, we do not want them to participate in Russia's illegal war in Ukraine or Iran's contributions to that. That's why we have strict export permits in place for sensitive technology that are rigorously enforced. And that's why we're going to be following up with this company that is fully cooperating to try and figure out exactly how items that were not supposed to get into the hands of anyone like the Iranian government actually ended up there. We know there are obvious challenges that it did, and we're working to solve that and ensure that it doesn't happen again in the future.
Quick follow-up for the Prime Minister and the Premier. This weekend, the Children's Hospital of Eastern Ontario said the Red Cross has been called in to help with young patients suffering from respiratory viruses. Experts have been clear that mask mandates would help slow the spread of RSV. Are either of you willing to implement mask mandates and to try to take the pressure off of hospitals? Thank you.
First of all, as a father, but also as a leader, I'm extremely worried about what Canadian kids are facing right now. Families really worried about whether or not they're going to be able to get their kids to hospitals, not just at CHEO in Ottawa, but right across the country. So we all need to continue our work on making sure we're improving healthcare systems, making sure we're delivering the results and the outcomes that Canadian parents and indeed all Canadians need. When it comes to looking at the challenges faced by respiratory illnesses and perhaps a resurgence of the pandemic, we're going to make sure we're listening to the best advice from experts and public health authorities to make sure we're doing whatever is necessary to keep Canadians safe. But of course, I will remind everyone that the number one thing we can all do to keep ourselves safe, to keep our loved ones safe, is make sure that you're up to date in your COVID vaccinations. And while you're at it, get your flu shot. There's a lot of people getting sick this year, perhaps because we're so diligent about being safe over the past couple of years and wearing masks that we need to step up again and make sure that everyone's doing everything they can to keep their families, their loved ones, and their communities safe by getting vaccinated and making sure they're up to date. Premier.
Well, thanks for the question. I've been in constant communication along with our Minister of Health. I visited CHEO. I got to give Alex Munter a shout out, the CEO over there. He's done an incredible job thinking outside the box. He's brought pediatric experts from Origin to help out. I want to thank the Red Cross for helping out on the administration side to free up our frontline healthcare workers. We're graduating, well, we're actually bringing on this year alone. We still have a month left. Over 14,000 nurses, and some of them are going to be pediatric nurses. We have 30,000 nurses in the hopper in the universities and in colleges. We're building medical schools in Brampton and over in Scarborough. So we're investing over $5.6 billion more into healthcare every single year, and we're throwing everything we can at the healthcare system, including investing over $40 billion in 50 sites across Ontario. Now, CHEO is up in Ottawa. They're the only major hospital that takes care of pediatric care, unlike a place like Toronto. But we will be there for them. And again, Alex, you're doing an incredible job. This guy thinks outside the box. He comes up with the best ideas. He texts them over to me, and then we implement them. So he's doing a great job. But the good news is, talking to the chief medical officer, we're seeing the pediatric illness actually level. Up in Ottawa, they're seeing a spike, but here in Toronto, we're seeing it level off, which is good news.
Next. Thank you. Next question, CP.
Sharif Hassan from the Canadian Press. I have two questions, one for Prime Minister Trudeau and one for Premier Ford. My first question is for Prime Minister. Are you at all concerned that Europe's aggressive pushback against the US Inflation Reduction Act could somehow end up endangering the competitive advantage the law affords Canada's auto industry?
We have a free trade deal with Europe that we signed a few years ago, and we're continuing to see the benefits of that, which is an advantage Canada has over the United States when it comes to accessing European markets. So that's certainly not something that is going unnoticed in places here like in Ontario, where we're manufacturing so many cutting-edge electric vehicles and strong cars for the future. We're always going to focus on remaining competitive. We're always going to focus on making sure that we can sell not just into the United States and manufacture here in Canada for the United States, but also for partners around the world. Yes, it's something we're watching closely, and we're engaged with our European counterparts as well as our American counterparts to make sure that we're working together. We know the competition will be there between Canada, the United States, and Europe, but we know that the three areas working together to respond to the needs of the world is going to be in our best interest altogether. We'll continue working with friends to make sure that countries that share our approach, not just on democratic values, but on good labor standards, on environmental responsibility, on understanding responsible supply chains, are the ones that succeed into the 21st century.
Premier Ford is using the Red Cross to bail out a children's hospital like CHIO, part of the province's search plan to address the ongoing crisis at pediatric hospitals.
And I got to apologize. It was a little fuzzy there, but it's something to do with CHIO. I think I answered it last.
Let me ask it again. Is using the Red Cross to bail out children's hospitals like CHIO part of the province's search plan to address the crisis at pediatric hospitals in the province?
Well, again, I want to thank Red Cross for stepping up, but we're pouring money, as I mentioned, into the healthcare ministry, unlike this province or this country's ever seen before. We're going to continue investing into our great nurses, into our PSWs, into our doctors, into the medical schools, and into the infrastructure. And I just want to give Alex, again, a shout out for doing an incredible job. And we're going to have more nurses, pediatric nurses, spread out across this province. As we saw, over 14,000 new nurses come online here in Ontario in just the last year. 30,000 are in our schools, our colleges and universities waiting to graduate.
Sorry, a follow-up question. Do you expect... sorry. Okay, sorry.
The next question, Automotive News Canada.
Hi, thanks for taking questions. David Kennedy with Automotive News Canada. First question is for the Prime Minister. Canada recently announced changes to how it would review takeovers of critical mining companies, including lithium miners. Was this done because Canada is concerned about losing control of its resources?
I think one of the things we're seeing around critical minerals, and it's being reinforced by the fact that Russia went from a partner to Europe to an invader of Europe just earlier this year. Companies and countries around the world are looking at the reliability of their supply chains. We went from a focus on maximum efficiency in supply chains over the past decade to post-pandemic and post-war in Ukraine, looking at reliability, redundancy, and resilience in our supply chains. And on that, Canada is extraordinarily fortunate to have both access to most of the critical minerals that the world needs The world needs for the clean energy transition. The world needs for the new technologies we're bringing in. We have those minerals here, and we're building the supply chains that go with it, whether it's the production facilities, the transformation facilities, the manufacturing facilities, eventually even the recycling facilities. We want to make sure that companies that do business with Canada, that allies who are relying on Canada, will be able to rely on us to deliver on our commitments. And that's why making sure we're in control of our critical minerals, we're in control of the manufacturing processes is extremely important. And that's why we are ensuring the integrity and reliability of Canada as a partner.
Thanks. And a follow-up for the GM team. Given that the company is now building EVs in Canada, what is the company doing to source critical battery material here in Canada?
Thank you for the question. So first and foremost, we did announce a joint venture earlier this year in Bécancour, Quebec, where we would process cathode active material. Also, just within the last couple of weeks, we've announced a partnership agreement with Vale for nickel sulfate. And what's important about that is they're actually going to be processing the nickel into the form that's necessary to feed directly into that plant in Bécancour. So that is the first of its kind in North America. We also have been pursuing partnerships with a variety of other raw mineral suppliers to ensure that we have a robust, sustainable, and secure ecosystem for our battery systems in North America.
Perfect, thanks.
Okay, and the next question will be the last from the Post.
David Booth, Post Media Driving. My question would be for Minister Fedeli, please. There was an extension of the Volkswagen Memorandum of Understanding. They're going to be building a plant here, I think, of some sort. Do we have more information on whether it's a cathode active material plant or if it's an actual gigafactory? And if it's in a gigafactory, how did we get it past the IRA's 45X?
Thank you very much for the very detailed question. I can tell you that if you follow our province's social media, you would know that I was with Volkswagen about a month ago, as well as Mercedes and BMW. And so we're always encouraged as companies all over the world look to Ontario for their results. I think the Premier was the one who said it earlier, that we've lowered the burden on these companies by $7 billion a year, and that's why they're looking at Ontario. We've attracted $16 billion worth of automotive investments in Ontario in the last 22 months, and people are looking at Ontario to see what's going on there and why are they so successful and what is happening in this turnaround. So while we don't talk publicly about any of the prospects we're dealing with on a day-to-day basis, I can tell you, if you've been following our social media, you'll have a full understanding of the last 8 countries we've been to since the election, the kinds of companies. We post all of the photos of who we're meeting with, and it's very exciting to know that there are companies around the entire globe who are looking at Ontario because we have the critical minerals, whether it's the nickel in Sudbury and other places around Timmins, the lithium in northwestern Ontario, the lithium hydroxide facilities that are being planned for northern Ontario, all the way through the supply chain of our great 700 great parts manufacturers in Ontario, the 500 tool and die and mold manufacturers in Ontario, the 65,000 STEM grads that we produce every year. We have everything they need, so it's no surprise that companies like Volkswagen are looking at places like Ontario.
Thank you, and that concludes today's press conference.
All right. Thanks, everyone.
There you go, folks. News conference wrapping up.
Refreshment.
And that brings that to a close. So I just have some video to share with you here of the CAMI facility plant retooling process. Just give me a moment and I'll bring that up and we'll comment a little bit and I'll be right back. Just give me a minute. Be right back.
Hello, world. Are you awake? Uniting humankind by liberating millions of minds at a time. Maverick News. The world is watching.
The New World Order. Government overreach. The Great Reset. Mainstream media lies. Now more than ever, independent voices are needed. Donate now at freedomreporters.com. That's freedomreporters.com. Maverick News. The antivirus program for your mind.
So CAMI goes full electric. The first full EV production facility in Canada. Here's some B-reel of the plant and the restoration process. Not restoration, but the retooling process, rather. Just to look inside. Massive investment by both the federal and provincial governments. Your tax dollars at work. Government's all in on this. I thought the question posed to Doug Ford was interesting. When he took office, he was critical of electric vehicles, electric vehicle production, the transition to EV vehicles. He removed the incentive program that was in place provincially. And then since then, he's been pumping hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars into the transformation of the auto industry in Ontario. The federal government also all in on this. I thought his answer to the question about, are you concerned about this and why would you take those kinds of actions after being critical? Thought it was interesting. He said, oh, well, consumers were buying electric vehicles made elsewhere. Now they'll be buying vehicles made here, which is not entirely true. I think it's more about political expediency. The reality is back then, he was scoring political points. He was looking at the polls and he saw there was soft public support for this stuff. And among the conservative base, he knows there's great skepticism. And he was playing to that to get votes. Once elected, he continued to play to that, but over time, I think with pressure from the federal government and a lot of money on the table, he changed his tune, changed his direction. And that's what's going on within the automotive industry in general. These companies are being offered massive incentives to undertake this transformation, to move from gasoline-powered vehicles to electric production. They're slowly, over time, adding more and more penalties. to those companies that choose to produce gasoline-powered vehicles. They're adding penalties through taxation. To those who choose to purchase gasoline-powered vehicles, and they're incentivizing electric vehicle production with subsidies and tax breaks on the other side, financed with funds generated through other areas of the economy, in particular, the sale of gasoline-powered vehicles, trying to push the market. And that's exactly what this is. This is not market-driven. This is driven by government policy, government economic policies. And we'll see if they get it right. If they don't get it right, I think we're in for a world of hurt. If they do get it right, then the future could be okay. Only time will tell. And these are the vehicles they'll be producing in CAMI. These Zevo, I believe they're 400 and Zevo 600 series vehicles. The first 600 rolling off the assembly line today in CAMI, in the CAMI plant. The federal and provincial governments dumping hundreds of millions of dollars into this. And why wouldn't the auto companies fall into line? What they're being offered is your tax money to comply with a government program. That's what this is all about. This is the Ultium battery pack system that General Motors uses. It's big money. If you think about it, the auto companies, the automakers, and the supply companies stand to make huge money from this. Far more money than they would make even just trying to sell gasoline-powered vehicles. They're transforming the entire industry. So if they get to replace every vehicle on the road with an electric vehicle, if they get to completely retool their plants with subsidies from the federal government, that benefits these corporations immensely. They get to upgrade their plants, shift into basically a new industry with the support of government tax dollars, our tax dollars. It's a transfer of wealth again, in many respects. If they get it right, we do benefit as a society because we get the production benefits back. We get vehicles that are produced that we need. And if it's successful, then I guess we benefit from the overall success of the industry, right? If they get it wrong, we're on the hook. The auto companies too, to some degree, because they're also investing money in this. But make no mistake, folks, this is a transfer of tax dollars to big corporations, your tax dollars to big corporations, and they get to transform their auto plants, their parts factories, the supply chain, every aspect of their business. So, of course, they're going to respond. And they know if they don't, they'll probably be out of business because the government will just penalize them. They're going to make it impossible for auto companies at some point to sell internal combustion engine powered vehicles. It's the way it is. So if, at least in the short term, with all this government money flowing, there will be jobs. At some point, they need to make it efficient and make it work. And as I say, time will tell. So that's what's happening at the CAMI plant today. That was the big news conference, the big announcement. And I guess we were right. Q4 production now fully underway at the General Motors assembly facility in Ingersoll, Ontario. And I did go to their website earlier today, and it looks like they are hiring. So if you need a job, union positions available right now in Ingersoll. That's a plant that has served the communities there very well over the years since it was originally built, providing employment for thousands and thousands of people, good paying jobs in the auto industry. Let's cross our fingers and hope that they get it right, because at this point, there's really no turning back. So I'm hoping and praying that it does bring prosperity to people. It's just that with this electric car technology and everything I'm seeing, I remain somewhat skeptical. I just hope I'm wrong. I hope they get it right. So with that being said, we will be back tonight at 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. I did want to bring you this news conference because it does mean so much to the local communities there, Ingersoll, London, Ontario, Kitchener, Southwestern Ontario, for the automotive industry as a whole, for the parts industry, for even the United States, because there's so much trade in the auto industry that goes back and forth across the border. It's huge for the national economies of both countries. It's huge for the people. Huge for the people. And I'm just checking the messages here. I see that Arthur sent me a message. I'll take a look. Thank you, Arthur. Renegade says he'd rather ride a horse. Yeah. Yeah. The electric vehicles, when you drive them, even if they're fast, they just don't have the same, they just don't feel the same. You know, it's going to take some getting used to, folks. I miss the rumble of the engine when I'm in an electric vehicle. That's why they pump fake engine sounds into the cabin through the stereo system on a lot of the cars today. I guess it's what you're used to. I'm not entirely convinced this is all going to work. I do know this. There are environmental concerns that they will need to address beyond simply emissions when it comes to electric cars. And you didn't see any questions asked about that today. What are they going to do with all these batteries? They'll need to recycle them somehow. And I'm not sure that the proper facilities are in place yet. But these are all questions that I'm sure we'll deal with as time marches on. And we will be back as time marches on at 6 p.m. tonight. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in for this Maverick News program. CAMI Automotive Facility in Ingersoll, Ontario, now fully operational as Canada's first full EV production facility. More to come tonight. Catch you all on the flip side. Thank you so much. I'll be back.
This has been a Maverick Multimedia production.